Okay, what we're going to do today, we're going to change the wheel bearings in a 2002 Ford F-150 5.4 liter engine, four-wheel drive with anti-lock brakes. Now the first thing you need to do is make sure you have the tools. Now the tools that you need, you could possibly need a cheater pipe to give you leverage, a jack stand, you need replacement wheel bearings. Anytime you replace wheel bearings, I suggest, like this, we're going to be replacing the front wheel bearing. There's actually only one bad, but what you want to do is, since they probably have similar mileage, when you replace one, you want to replace them in pairs. So we're going to change the front too. You'll also need a jack. You need a 35 millimeter axle bolt, a 10 millimeter, an 18 millimeter, and a 15, and extensions with a ratchet, and of course a lug wrench. That is the first step. All right, now the next step is, of course, while this is on the ground, to go ahead and start taking the lug nuts off like this. You get them broke and loosened up, and just go all the way around and get them all loose for when you jack the car up, which that will be next. Okay, the next thing you want to do, and I'm doing this for safety in case the jack fails. I'm always for safety, because if one thing fails, you have a fail safe, because you don't want to get injured or killed. I'm going to put this jack stand underneath here, and then I just raise it all the way up, set it right there. That way if the jack fails, then it's still going to be elevated. Okay, the next step is, once you get the lug nuts off of the tire, you put them somewhere that you're not going to lose them. I'm going to lay them right there, and then see if your tire will come off easily, which this one is going to, but if it doesn't, you may want to kick it with the back of your shoe and loosen it up. So the tire, it's time for it to come off, and I'm just going to set it up here out of the way. And then now you have access to everything. And the next step, okay guys, what I'm doing is, on this particular truck, there's a cap that's protecting the axle bolt, and there's a cotter pin, and I'm using it to bend the cotter pin just like so. I'm trying to straighten it up. Now what I need to do is, got this right here.
Might be in that little bracket might be in the way of it sliding up out of there.
It's not. I'm going to try to tap the cotter pin with the hammer here.
I don't think it's been out there in a while.
Okay, so just pull it up out of there, and there's the cotter pin. Here's the casing, and it just pulls right off like that. And then you have access to the bolt. All right, the next step you need to do is, I have the brakes on, and I'm going to put this underneath, or I'm going to put this over top of the axle bolt and the breaker bar. This is a cheater pipe, and this is going to break the bolt. Okay, got it. Here's the brake caliper, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back here and up here, Right there is an 18mm bolt. And down here is the other 18mm bolt. I'm going to loosen those up, and I'm going to take off the brake caliper and retention bracket as a whole, and then I'm going to use a bungee cord and let it hold up to the frame here, so I'll have room to work in here when I remove the rotor. Okay guys, the next step is these 18mm bolts. Set them where you're not going to lose them, and then this is ready to come off. This is your brake caliper and retention bracket. You want to be careful with the line in the back here, this line, that it doesn't break, because that's your hydraulic line. Okay, once you get the axle bolt off, I've already checked and this rotor is on there very good. So what I've learned is right here, not where the brakes go, not where the brake shoes are going to go, but right here, you just want to keep tapping and tapping. Not really hard, just tap. Don't hit the studs, just like this, until it comes off. So you keep tapping until it comes off. Then you just lay the rotor out of the way. Got it. Now, next part is inside. There are going to be three 15mm bolts that's actually going to take off the wheel hub with the bearing. Now what I'm going to do is use a cheater pipe. Normally you guys would have a smaller one, but I don't have that luxury, so I'm going to have to use this big one here. It's turning, and then you get enough torque and you break that bolt loose. Things are really hard, extra hard today on this truck, because I think everything's original. Everything's original, and there's a lot of rust and mud, but the rust is pretty bad here, which I'm going to sand it down and clean it before I put the new bearing on there. And then you take these out just like that, and then you put them in a place that you're not going to forget where they go. Now that's how you do it, boys. You put the old pepper in it. I just put some good old bicep muscle in it. And then that's the second one. Okay, lastly, what you can do, guys, right here, this is where the last bolt is, and what I've done is I've actually turned the wheel and it's given me access to this. So if you have trouble getting access to any of the bolts, just turn the wheel and you can get better access that way. Here's that cheater bar again. And this is breaking the bolt loose so that I can turn it with my hand, just like that. Now, as you can see, it's starting to come out. And like I said, you might have to turn the steering wheel to get better access to these bolts. And then make sure you do not lose those. Now the next step, guys, is that front hubs assembly, all that is ready to come off. And you may have to pound on it. I almost forgot, it doesn't matter if you pound on it because it's going to be coming off. Unhook the anti-lock brakes first. So there's these rubber pieces that are going to come out. And right here is where it disconnects. So you're going to want to disconnect this from your hub, your anti-lock brakes. And you just tap this. And then it's off. There's the old one. Okay, now when you're going to put on the new hub, you can see the axles here. These are the threads. This is called the spline. Now you do not want to strip this out, so you want to line it up with the bearings and the wheel hub. And this has anti-lock brakes, so we're not going to want to mess that up. What we are going to do on this particular model, you can see there is a plastic tab that mounts right here to the back of that wheel knuckle with an 8mm screw. So we're going to mount that into place. Now I'm tightening it. And you don't over tighten it, you just kind of flush tighten it, because all its job is to do is to hold this wire up. So almost. There, it's on there. And then you follow these plastic tabs. Let me get a flashlight here. Well, I don't know if you can see it from that flashlight, but there's these plastic tabs there where this is going to run along, and this kind of clips on there. Might want to get the phone light going. Okay, you want to run these up here and clip it into there, into each of those plastic pieces. Then you run it up around, and then you're going to plug it in. This is for your anti-lock brakes, and it just snaps in just like you heard it snap. This goes back up around there, just like that, out of the way. And this, since this isn't bolted down, you can see right here, you can move this to line it up. And then we're on to the next step.
I'm just gonna give you a flashlight. Okay.
Okay, the next step is these 15mm bolts are going to go back in, and you want to make sure it's lined up. And I'm going to get them finger started. And I'm going to put them in on all sides. Okay. Now I'm going to take the 15mm ratchet and I'm going to start getting it a little flush. I'm not going to tighten it down yet all the way. I'm going to get it flush, and then I'm going to tighten it down. Coming through there, kind of like that, guys. And see, it's pulling the hub back on. Now I'm not going to tighten it down completely yet. Just a little flush like that, because I'm going to have to get the other bolts in. Okay, go ahead and pause it. Now we're almost done. See, we have the new wheel hub installed. We have the anti-lock brakes wire clipped back on. So now we need the rotor. That goes back on. Okay, you put the caliper back on, and you don't even have to use the C-clamp on these. And then you just push it onto the rotor until it lines up back here to these 18mm bolts. If you remember when you took it out, it goes back here into the wheel knuckle. And I'm just going to finger tighten it in. And again, I'm just going to get it flush before I tighten it all the way, because I want to get it started, and then I'm going to start the bottom one. Okay, the last step, once this is all done, is to put the tire back on. And then your lug nuts and your lug wrench. You'll put them on diagonally and put them on flush so that it will go on nice and even. And before you put the car down from the jack, you just put it on flush. Don't over tighten. Don't over tighten. In closing, there's a couple things I need to tell you. Okay, I have those flush, and it is ready for the jack to be put down. Also, wear a good ensemble like I'm wearing. You know, some old clothes, so that your wife doesn't get onto you, or your husband, whichever. So, with that in mind, Make sure everybody's back, no one's around.
You got the jack.
Oh, I almost forgot the jack stand. Get the jack stand. And then you just turn it to the left. It is off. And then the last step is to tighten these once the wheel is on the ground. And that's what I'm going to do.